Happy Friday, everyone, and welcome to a special edition of Project Blue's live chat series. If this is your first time tuning in, welcome, and I'm glad you can join us. If you've joined us before, welcome back. The way it works is they'll present, and if you have any questions for the artist during this hour, please use the Q&A function located at the bottom of the Zoom page, and we'll try to get to as many as we can. Now, we have 3 guests joining us today, and they will probably go on to introduce themselves in more depth, but I'll take a first crack at it. First off, we have Mason Rothschild. He is a multi-sensory installation artist, stage designer, and inventor. The founder and creative director of Discordian Design, Rothschild has worked with many global brands, including Netflix, BuzzFeed, TikTok, and more. Next up is Annie Sperling. She is an artist and set designer whose extensive portfolio includes music videos, commercial projects, and commissioned murals for the Los Angeles Unified School District. Sperling has served as production designer for many projects, working with global music stars Billie Eilish and Miley Cyrus, and world-renowned artists David LaChapelle and Ellen von Unwerth. And moderating today's event will be Cynthia Hirschhorn. Cynthia is an environmental designer and advocate for healthy civic life who believes in aligning missions to amplify resources for more impact at the civic scale. Cynthia founded Unison Civic Arts to inspire more harmonious civic environments by connecting numerous individual visions, just as many voices in unison sync to make harmonious sounds. On top of that, Cynthia also serves on the Alta-C Board of Trustees, and we are so excited to have her join us today. Now, you may be wondering why we have these talented artists join us when we typically have oceanographers on. And Alta-C is excited to announce the Blue Hour, which you see on the screen here. The Blue Hour is a drive-in experience at the Port of Los Angeles, which will take place on October 10th from 6 to 8:30 p.m. Alta-C will be giving their first ever awards to ocean innovators and explorers who have paved the way and inspired the next generation of ocean innovators. The night will conclude with a special one-night-only commissioned art installation by Annie and Mason in collaboration with world-renowned artist Rafiq Anadol. The installation will be projected over the USS Iowa. Tickets are on sale on our website, which I will put in the chat box shortly. With that, I want to give everyone a big thank you for joining us, and I'm going to turn it over to Cynthia now.
Thank you, and good afternoon. I'm Cynthia Hirschhorn, and I'm excited to welcome you to this afternoon's live chat with artists who are creating this spectacular show for the Blue Hour. As was announced, I'm an environmental designer and founder of Civicus, Women's Civic Action Network. At Civicus, we connect leaders across sectors and educate them on civic scale issues to help make our city more healthy and equitable for all. Our motto, and my personal one as well, is to align missions and amplify resources. And as I'm personally focused on water issues from mountains to sea, I'm honored to serve on the boards of River LA and Alta-C. I also created the flowproject.la platform to build community and develop projects using public art and urban gardens to support water resiliency in the blue economy. I think we have some slides, but I think Annie, are you?
Yep.
Okay, that was Civicus, and then there's a Flow Project slide. So we develop projects using public art and urban gardens to support water resiliency in the blue economy. Alta-C is focused on the ocean education and developing the blue economy. So today we want to share how the Blue Hour came to be. Earlier this year, we created Project Blue with this amazing team at Alta-C who developed educational programming and a new platform on our website to showcase live streams like this and engage students of all ages, especially to give youth a voice about the ocean's opportunities to solve climate change and create clean, blue jobs in the blue economy. In order to share this with more people, we decided to do our fall fundraiser as Project Blue Presents and host something amazing we could do despite possible COVID restrictions. Thus, the Blue Hour is going to be a drive-in spectacular and also create fantastic content we can share through live streaming the event as well as afterwards through social media. This drive-in movie experience will be in the parking lot in front of the USS Iowa battleship. And to animate the battleship too, I was inspired by Rafiq Anadol, a media artist I met whom a few years ago projected images onto the LA River in Disney Hall, and Mason Rothschild, whom I met at a River LA event where he projected water images onto the ceiling of the event. I'm so happy they both said yes to help bring this idea alive. And in fact, when I called Mason, it turns out he and Annie Sperling had been working together on ideas for connecting top influencers to the ocean, about which you will hear more shortly. So it seems like destiny connected us, as we are all aligned by our missions to help heal the world, focusing on water and the ocean, and using art and technology and culture to share this message and inspire people to be positive change. It has been a great experience to work on this together for all to see, and I know you too will be inspired hearing more about them and our project today. I also hope you will join us to experience it in person on October 10th. Now, please welcome Annie Sperling and Mason Rothschild, and feel free to post questions that I will field to them after their presentations. Thank you.
Hi, guys.
Hello. So I'm going to start with, nice to meet everyone virtually. I'm going to start with a little bit about what I do. What's been exciting to me lately is I am still kind of getting out of being in lockdown, but I am trying to refocus what I have done for the past 15 or so years and have the product and the beneficiary be ecological and something to better the world. What I started with, I've always been an artist. I'm a painter, photographer. I make things. These are murals. For quite a long time, when I first moved to Los Angeles from San Francisco, I painted murals all over the city, many with kids who were deemed by the city at risk, meaning they had been arrested for graffiti or other gang involvement. So we made over 20 murals in the city. I did interior design. I taught school in in Los Angeles. And then all of that led me to my present career, which is production design. I work a lot doing editorials and art projects, as well as music videos and commercials. The one on the right is a new Miley Cyrus project, and the one on the left is Miley Cyrus again for the cover of David LaChapelle's book. Many of David LaChapelle's projects are some of my favorites. These are two pictured here. I'm in charge of making the sets. I'm in charge of renting all the props, having a crew, running the budget, and working with the director for the overall design. Most of my projects start with kind of tiny pencil sketches, then making it to scale. In this case, it was a giant construction of a head. This is for a vitamin. On the top left, you'll see the head falling. All of these projects are kind of big in theory and sometimes quite difficult to manufacture in the time and money. It's like high hopes and little money, big dreams. This is the finished project. This is it's about 24 feet high with all kinds of fun construction. This was a balloon infused lungs and a heart that kind of animated during the commercial. This is another project for David LaChapelle. He's quite fun to work with. There's tons of kind of collaboration with all the artists that I know, which helps me justify the person buying it, in this case, Nespresso tea. I do get to hire a lot of really talented artists, which is part of the fun for me. This is a pretty well publicized project I did recently. This was for Travis Scott. This is his album cover. A lot of times when you're doing things, you're a bit in a bubble and you're surprised when it becomes kind of everywhere, which this one did. That head that I designed went all over the world, which was fun. But lately, I've been trying to refocus, and instead of the beneficiary being a product or a particular individual, I've been thinking more about ways to impact the earth in a positive way. I'm very concerned, like many, with climate change and the pollution. This was a project I did with David LaChapelle, who's also very concerned. This was a coffee company, but they were all about kind of nature, which was a fun project we did at his home in Hawaii. So that led me to Mason, who I've been working with quite a bit, and we have been discussing this project all during COVID. I'm going to turn it over to Mason.
Yeah, hi. Oh, I can hear myself. So my story begins with audio. I started as a musician. I studied audio engineering and jazz and music history in college. And my first kind of foray really into the art world starts with a band. I got kind of lucky, if you'll kind of, I started with a band called Fever the Ghost. And I was kind of the de facto creative director, and we started a band, and we kind of have an old school music story where we got signed within the first 3 weeks, and we were on the road 8 months out of the year, and I got to work with some of my heroes, and I had some budgets to start doing things like the one where I'm a dog in a spacesuit. I lied and told them I was a costume designer for a major motion picture where they won't let you into these like costume places, and we went and like picked through all of the things and made our own costumes. And I realized that like just kind of reaching out to people and asking questions, and like no one is unreachable, nothing is unattainable, is kind of what this band taught me through collaboration. If you'll slide for me. So our first real big success is we worked with this animator that I really loved online, and I wrote him a letter, and I hyperlinked every single word to like Japanese pop stars and a bunch of different art stuff. And ended up talking to him as a strawberry head that I made out of paper mache, and we talked this guy into making this music video, and within like 3 days we had 15 million hits. And so that kind of like launched us out into doing a record with the Flaming Lips and Miley Cyrus actually too. Got to work with Miley as well, which is weird crossover between me and Annie. And we covered the Beatles record, the Sgt. Pepper's Lonely Hearts Club Band, all together kind of as a super group band, which was really good. And so while doing this, my friends and I, if you'll slide for me, we started a music festival in Joshua Tree called Desert Days. This is a picture from the first year, and it's now in its 10th year. And I was the creative director for 5 of those years. And we went from, a 500-person party to a 15,000-person 3-day music festival with, Iggy Pop and Primus. And I grew creatively there a lot. So I, designed all of the stages. I developed all of the language. I worked with all of the sponsors to do activations, which means kind of like, bringing in someone like Adult Swim, which I think is on the next slide. I also curated all the art for the grounds. And so this is some collaborative stuff. In the top left is a painter that I'm a fanatic of who'd never done any physical work. And I went and tracked him down to his house in Arizona, became friends with him, designed the box pyramid, the ziggurat, and I brought him out to California to build that at our studio. And the central and image on the top right, I worked with the team from the Fillmore from the 1960s that did Janis Joplin's Light Show. There was a 14-year-old that learned from them that's still doing oil and food coloring overhead projections. So I built a lot of stages for them, and kind of brought in modern technology into that, and some of these other art installs. And so I just started building a lot of installation art, and kind of in a very collaborative way. And community is really like a big part of my art, is kind of reaching out to disparate people with kind of disparate skills and kind of bringing everyone together to make magical places. And so companies kind of started taking note of what I was doing, and I got asked to make an experience with Adult Swim, which is one of my favorite companies. Actually, they put out a lot of animation that wouldn't otherwise have a place in this world. So one of the first like kind of branded experiences I did was a theater for Adult Swim, where we showed the first time ever people got to see Rick and Morty, which became like a huge breakout success. And it was in this weird Lloyd Wright church that's called the Institute of Mental Physics in Joshua Tree. And from there, I decided just to start my own company. So I got a warehouse and kind of swung the bat with some savings and started building my own kind of tech. This is me. I built a screen out of thousands of individual tiny LED lights. And I started making kind of like structural pieces out of this. So a lot of my work right now surrounds video and structure, sculpture. So I've been making kind of video sculptural works. This is just a slide of some of the stuff Lil Nas X, like we came up with the idea to do his release party. I know you guys probably are really tired of that Old Town Road song, but we did his release party at Bob Baker Marionette Theater, and which is like a classic marionette theater in Los Angeles. And we made a Little Nas and did a puppet show. And so it's just kind of like the nature of my work. I really like surreal placemaking and absurdity, and just like bringing like a childlike sense of fun to, you know, large scale art. And so I've, you know, done that for brands and celebrities just like Annie. And that's when, you know, when COVID happened, like all of our work kind of stopped, and we kind of came together and we're like, oh, what can we do? This is actually from one of our first decks. We would just get together every day at 9 a.m. just so we got out of bed and start making like ideas. And so I think what we were initially drawn to is we came up with this phrase, pop star treatment for ecology. And using our kind of background, we felt like, you know, there's like kind of some marketing issues surrounding ecological causes. And so, you know, trying to like make space for those, they just felt like the most important to us, because, you know, we as we're growing and learning as a society and dealing with like these large problems, if we don't have a planet left to live on, then there's no room for growth or hope. So that's why Annie and I are really directed at water, because it's like the main kind of ingredient to life, and the oceans kind of spawn everything on our planet. So we were just getting together every day and making these kind of decks. And Annie, you can kind of go through them a little bit. And I had a message in my spam folder for like a week from Cynthia, and she was talking to us about this Blue Hour idea. And I had just called her immediately and said, I can't believe how synchronistic this is. We've been making all of these decks, and this is exactly what we want to do. And so, you know, Cynthia really gave us like such a great opportunity here to create a piece. And now we're working, and we're going to kind of go through our piece, but she's given us opportunities to really branch out and collaborate with, you know, we're working with Schmidt Ocean Institute. They're giving us a ton of really cool 4K footage that we can manipulate for our projection show. And we're working with Esri to get like the most up-to-date 3D maps of the bathymetry at the bottom of the ocean. So, you know, like taking a look at what the ocean's floors look like, and using art to kind of like express our ideas about the mystery and what's left still to learn about the oceans is really inspiring to us. So that's kind of like a brief overview of my career, and kind of into how me and Annie and Cynthia are all working together on this project.
I mean, it basically was like sort of this magical confluence, because we had been speaking, I think all of us were deeply affected by the stillness and how the earth kind of started to regenerate with human beings being down just for those several months. And all we were talking about is the ocean. And then Mason connected me to Cynthia and Altasea, who are completely ocean conscious and trying to forward think commerce, forward think everything that we can do at impacting. So that's where we kind of all came together, and this event started to unfold. So the Blue Hour, we were asked to do an event that's going to get projected on the USS Iowa. which was amazing because Mason and I had been talking nonstop about doing things about the ocean, and this would be an exciting thing in San Pedro that's going to be projection mapped on this ancient giant ship in the San Pedro harbor. We decided, after speaking to Jenny from Altasea and Cynthia and Carl, they are deeply connected to Esri, who are mapping the ocean floor. I've been watching Bob Ballard, who's being honored. The ocean floor is barely understood, even though it's almost 75% of the earth. We only know about 21% of what's under there, which is a phenomenal resource that we aren't even tapping into. So we decided to do our piece about mapping, which is a big part of Altasea's connection to forward thinking.
And to really, you know, like address these complicated issues and complicated systems like the ocean, you can't really address these systemic problems until we understand the entire system. So that's what's really interesting to me too about this mapping project. And there's a big push to map the rest of the ocean by 2030. So I think that it's just, you know, as companies are really, and tech is starting to focus on understanding the ocean so that we can treat you know, these large global problems and preserve our natural resources. I think we really feel that mapping is one of the keys to that, understanding these ecosystems and getting the data and seeing the full picture of what's happening. So that's why we chose kind of mapping and the history of mapping and human understanding of the ocean floor as kind of the basis for our project and our installation piece that we're projecting on the USS Iowa.
There's an interesting part of one of Bob Ballard's TED Talks where he discusses how as human beings, we know more about the surface of Mars than our own planet, which I feel like is kind of our duty and an impetus, I think, for all of us to really look deep and see how we can make a more positive impact. Most of my career lately, I mean, prior to COVID, has been kind of juicing the machine of consumerism. And Mason and I both felt like now is a good time for introspection and changing that flow and benefiting places like Altasea, benefiting places that are whose goals are ocean preservation, world preservation, linking communities, linking countries, which is an exciting thing about the idea of mapping the entire ocean being, it's a worldwide, you know, conquest. It's not just the United States, it's every country trying to figure out the bottom of the ocean for the benefit of humankind. Which leads us to our show, which is a history of mapping. This is kind of a little visual notes that we're working on to, we have a 10-minute projection that we're going to put onto the surface of that great battleship.
We're also making a score, so we're working on both concurrently, like a 10 to 12 minute piece of music, as well as this installation video art project. This is our first slide. I think we're just going to kind of you guys will bounce back and forth and kind of take you through so that when you are watching the show, hopefully in your car on October 10th at the Blue Hour, you'll have like a little bit more insight since you came to this meeting as to what our show is about and understand the narrative behind our art. So we chose to start with the earliest that we could find of humans really trying to understand the surface of the ocean, which would be 3,000 years ago. The Egyptians are dropping lines with stones off of their primitive ships and trying to get the first kind of soundings and feelings of the ocean floor, just so that they know how deep things are and where the deeper pockets of fishing for them are and where sandbars are, and just the initial understandings of the ocean. So as these ships kind of populate the USS Iowa, we get into kind of we're also focusing on a lot of digital art and manipulation. So the ships will kind of drop their lines down in a non-linear way. And so each of these is kind of a mood board that represents the phases of our project. And that's kind of how Annie and I work a lot of times, is not non-linear, not so much like sketching exactly what it's going to look like, but you know, kind of the feeling of it visually.
It
So
was
this is
super fascinating for us. I mean, that picture up at the top by the 30 is a man actually sending down a line with, you know, a heavy piece of stone to physically map the ocean. Mason and I have been taking a pretty hard crash course in the history of mapping, but the pioneers of it are just stunning information. The idea that the Egyptians were doing it, and it was a long, long chunk of time where this was the only way that we were getting information about the sea.
Yeah, so visually we're going to represent that by the, you know, there's a method called pixel sorting where we'll drop pixels from the images of these old ships, and it'll start making these kind of geometric patterns across the USS Iowa and drop down, and that's where we're going to first see some of the footage from Schmidt Ocean Institute of these kind of schooling fish. So it's like once the feelers go down, it's us starting to understand what's down there and just how wild that is for us. It's such an alien universe, and so this is kind of the first foray into human understanding, and that's going to kind of turn into three-dimensional geometric shapes as we start applying that to the world and start trying to get an understanding of the map of the world itself and where the continents are, and you know what our ocean shapes look like on the surface and coastlines and stuff.
Kind of longitude, latitude, and our real views of mapping, which kind of then leads, I think, to an interesting part of human kind of understanding. I've always loved these ancient maps, and what I think is really fascinating is they always have kind of these mythical creatures, these giant sea creatures, you know, gods blowing wind. I feel like with the knowledge of how deep the sea is, a fear of the ocean was also kind of addressed as well, which you can see in the maps. There's kind of tons of, you know, these weird creatures, which, to be honest, the more I watch every documentary on this too, they were correct. Like underneath the sea are some of the weirdest, most sci-fi Dr. Seuss creatures you could ever invent.
And I love, you know, about the scientific pursuit is just with every question that you answer, you can derive many more questions. And so I think a really kind of charming part of us, of our history of understanding the world, is once we can ask more questions, we develop these complicated myths. And, you know, although the myths are not correct and they're not based in science, it's our first way to start understanding these questions that we're asking, like where are these winds coming from? How are they caused? What is under the ocean? What is the size of the things under the ocean? And with, you know, kind of fear and mythology, I think we wanted to focus on that for a second, because I think it's really a beautiful way to try to understand. And so now we're kind of moving along, and we're moving into our first kind of use of modern technology, was kind of sonar, the sonar phase of understanding. This is where we're starting to really get into ocean floors, and that's all the way back in the 19 teens. You know, during World War I, we're using sonar to map the ocean floors, and those techniques have really kind of stayed with us into the modern day. And I think it's so impressive. This is a ship from 1919 that was doing something called side scan sonar, which is just like a really laborious process. And so to amalgamate all of the data and the soundings that they're bringing back, because you're kind of pinging the bottom and then it gives you a depth finding, and there's no computer that can kind of automate this process of putting those depth findings in places yet. So it's just bonkers to me that they're mapping these with coordinates as good as they can, and then they kind of start to be amalgamated. I think I kind of jumped ahead in descriptions, so Uh,
I think also what was fun, we're projecting it on the USS Iowa. Both my father and stepfather are in the Navy, and my father was actually on the USS Iowa as a midshipman, and my stepfather gave Mason and I like a crazy, like what the USS Iowa's role in history and what kind of guns, and I think that the confluence of this sort of modern thing we're doing on this ancient, warship is really kind of a beautiful history. The Navy was very, kind of a huge part of the initial sonar and mapping. There's a long history of naval kind of, science.
Exploration, yeah.
So then we get weird again.
which we often do. So we're kind of,
which leads us to the 50s, which is a nice kind of feminist story about a woman named Marie Tharp. She and her partner took all this data, and Marie actually, by hand, started mapping each dot and making what we now know are these kind of maps where we are going to see the depths of the ocean. And her story is kind of sadly a typical story of women, where her partner was on ships and had kind of an awesome traveling life related to what he was doing, and she was in kind of a basement office doing this pinpointing, and was really kind of a hero of mapping, and she's a bit unsung, so we're hoping to give her a little bit of dues. And we love maps, are beautiful.
I dug that story about Marie Tharp that we learned about, where she, in her mapping and plotting these points, she found the Mariana Ridge, so the opposite of the trench, and it's it is staggering. This feature, yeah, its size is incredible. And so when she came back to her partner and her research group, that's all men, she's like, look, I put together the data. This is down there. It's incredible. And they're like, that can't be right. This is girl stuff. Like, do the math again. And she kind of came back and was like, I did the math again. This exists under the ocean. Like, I found this. And so, I really think that this is such a hero person to me, Marie Tharp. Not to mention just like her output is so incredibly beautiful. And it's like this intersection of art and science, which I just find so alluring. And she's kind of one of the heroes of our story, which brings us to these next heroes in the Trieste, who are complete nut jobs.
Yeah, I mean, there may be some corrections due to this, but in my studies on Wikipedia and Google, there are these two kind of insane guys, because basically they're going into completely uncharted, the deepest part of the ocean, Mariana's Trench, and the pressure, the cold, the dark. There was every reason they should not have lived, but they did in this tiny vessel, and surprisingly were able to find life. So once again, we don't know what's under there, and there are things living in this harsh environment, which leads us to
we thought nothing. Yeah, we thought nothing could live down there, essentially, with the pressure and the complete absence of light. So yeah, we're going to focus for a minute, and this will be a really fun part, because this is when, it's going to be visually very, very exciting for me to use bioluminescence as a palette.
And also he has connected us to Schmidt Ocean, who are going to connect us to real footage that they have of these creatures that are just mind-boggling, that have their own luminescence, that are transparent, that are able to withstand this, that have developed these kind of teeth and eyes that somehow can live in this environment.
And, I never underestimate the power of a GIF in your Google Slides presentation, because we are...
That's the main takeaway.
Or GIF, if you want. But yeah, yes, I think that should be a takeaway. So what we wanted to do is, because our next kind of vantage point for understanding the oceans is actually from space, we wanted to use the color palette of the bioluminescence to push through the bottom of the ocean up into our first exploration from the satellite perspective. So that means we get to play with some cool outer space stuff. And then, you know, in a Carl Sagan kind of moment, we turn back and look at our Earth. And this is where
it is. See how blue and how unusual our planet compared to all our other knowledge of the other planets.
And the overview effect kind of thing too, you know, like how astronauts come back and they feel just connected to the planet and kind of escape the nation state kind of mindset of like, I'm from here, you're from there, and we're different. It's like, no, we're all from here, and we all have a mission to understand this. And I think that's super important, that, you know, once we have satellites helping us understand geolocation and like increasing the accuracy of our mapping, and it's really it's poetic to me that, you know, science has the same kind of overview effect once it went to space, of just getting clarity on where we are and what the system is that we're inside of, you know. So
and that leads us kind of to this next section, which the ships on the top and the this is where I was corrected quite a bit. I need to learn more about this, but these are vessels, some of which Bob Ballard, you know, was on, some of which other amazing scientists, and these are kind of this is where we are now. This is Esri and these beautiful, this is where Mason's going to go crazy with his computer technology. This is a flyover actually of the ocean. What they do is they overlay kind of a gradient of color to show us the different heights of what we're seeing in the ocean. And now, instead of having to go down individually, we have technology and machines that can give us this kind of product.
And I love that modern day scientists love rainbows. Because what I've noticed is that everything from the late 90s until now is in these like really beautiful rainbow palettes. And funny enough, some of the cartographers that we're actually working with are quite sick of them. But to us as artists, I was just kind of blown away at these like kind of rainbow gradient bathymetry models. So we were really inspired by that. And, you know, as we come to understand and learn more and get these much more clear pictures. I love that picture on the left. That was one of the first ones that we found. So that's the kind of stuff that Esri pulls together. They pull together a lot of stuff. I mean, I was looking at a map from Esri about the regional alcoholic beverage consumption of regions in Japan. There's just like absurd, crazy information at Esri, which I love that too. But in reference to just our kind of final output and a big push that I'm making with a programmer friend of mine, you can see at the top right, there's a movement reference, and what that represents is something called a style GAN, and that's two machine learning algorithms, two artificial intelligences, taking thousands of images, and in this case of horizons of a national park, and then generating its own imagery, which I think is super beautiful, to have a machine learning about our world and spitting out new possibilities about our world. And so kind of like a dream. And what we're working on right now is taking 10,000 images of different bathymetry from Esri and feeding it to our own neural network. And the output that we're getting is representative of what we're going to find. So, you know, as we move through this project in kind of a linear timeline, I wanted at the end to end up somewhere futuristic and dreaming of what we are yet to find and learn about, and also just get to go bonkers with rainbow colors and have a lot of fun with the mapping on the ship and make it visually interesting and have kind of our finale moment. So
at the finale, we thought it would be really beautiful just to come back kind of between space and the deep sea and kind of the platform we all know as the ocean, which is that gorgeous surface of the sea. So this is also where we will segue into amazing artist Rafiq Anadol's piece, which is a another kind of amalgamation of all these images. So it'll be a beautiful piece in its own that will follow ours.
Yeah, Rafiq's work is all steeped in data, in the intersection of data and art, and using data as a pigment. So we're going to end off with some generative art. That's an example of which is shown in the middle there. That's not water; it's actually math. So we're working on several things that, you know, are using kind of recursive mathematical algorithms to generate content like this. And that leads into a piece that Rafiq was kind enough to give us to demonstrate, which is all based on the tides of the Baltic Sea. And so he takes numbers that represent tidal patterns in the Baltic Sea and represents them geometrically with these kind of beautiful three-dimensional pigments. And so this last section is kind of where we're going to go back from our rainbow world and look above the sea with, you know, mathematical sea, and transition into Rafiq's like even more, much more beyond. I'm like a constant fan of Rafiq, and so he's an idol for me. So I wanted to kind of have something that was an homage to him as a transition there as well.
No, it's an amazing addition to have him, and I think it'll round out kind of nicely our mapping, because it's kind of a futuristic approach to the idea. And thank you. That will bring us back to the Blue Hour, and it is a super exciting event. I'm thrilled to be a part of it. Mason and I, it was like a thrilling moment to get together with Cynthia and begin our first major eco art project.
Well, thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you. I'm sure everybody who's watching has been so excited and inspired, and you guys have done an amazing, amazing, amazing job. I'm sure this is much more than you bargained for, but we are grateful and inspired. And the beauty of what we're doing is that it'll be this amazing spectacular on the evening, but we're also trying to capture it so that we can share it in the future, you know. So we want everyone to come on the evening, because you will never be able, this is just nothing like this is happening. You know, part of the whole idea was that we wanted to create an experience for people that is safe, but to, again, to create community. And that's what AltaSea is all about, is education and community. And to be able to come to this place, and there's going to be this giant movie screen, and we'll see all these amazing, never be seen footage of Under the Sea, and the presentations and the awards to Bob Ballard and Esri scientist Dawn, and then the student from Project Blue. And then the screen will come down, and this will be on the battleship, and it's just going to be a spectacular event. But we will also be capturing it, not only live streaming it, but trying to capture it to share afterwards, so that we can continue to educate and inspire people, which brings us to a question from Harry Woolway, which is ending with, you know, regarding climate change, increasing amounts of the global population, and finally making the connection between the human activity and destructive climate consequences. Unfortunately, many of us feel a disconnection between wanting to reduce our negative impact on our planet and our feeling of helplessness as individuals to make such impact. How can art serve to inspire large portions of the population and result in a real positive impact to the Earth's climate? Which is the perfect question, because that I hosted a salon earlier this year with Peter Sellers, who is also going to be speaking and sharing his work with us. And he talked about the idea that the science is out there, and we need to use art and the humanities to share this and inspire and engage people to make this change, which is how we came to the Blue Hour now and how we came to you. So my question would also be, you know, what are the key messages? You know, how would you help other artists and students who would love a career in arts, and how do you think that they can help share something as important as protecting our oceans? Which is what the Blue Project Blue, if you go to our website, the AltaSea website, you'll see that's what Project Blue was about, letting the students answer questions, and now, you know, kind of take it full throttle to this. So
Well, I do think he's asking a couple really important questions. There's a lot to feel overwhelmed and helpless. We're in a pandemic. There's demonstrations about murders. We're in a really heavy time. There's fires. I feel like Mason and I and many other artists have a responsibility to kind of shift focus and get together with other artists that you know and find outlets to make things change. I think we're all being asked that right now, and I feel like the more we press into it, the more these changes are happening, the more we will see positive things. I mean, I feel like this Alta Seas Blue Hour is a bit of a proof of concept for Mason and I that our thoughts were correct, that we do need to refocus our art. I don't only need to do music videos and commercials. I need to do things that build awareness for things that are much more pressing. I'm a huge fan of the ocean and very troubled by pollution, troubled that, you know, in the pandemic, we're getting more plastic bags and plastic forks and knives instead of addressing the situation and seeing what happened when we were down just for a few months. So I think that everyone can find outlets and get together. There's a lot of getting together that's necessary to push these projects through and make it a world, you know, united idea instead of, you know, tiny groups. These are huge ideas that need to be addressed now. We are seeing it with the fires and the climate change.
And to touch, you know, even more on just kind of bringing people together, like specifically what can art do, right? So, I mean, that's something I struggle with. And I think that is why I'm into experiential art and installation design is you can really have people through mixed media tap into, and I think the most powerful thing to get people to accept new ideas is to put them in a childlike headspace. And I think that's something that people lose very quickly. And it's something that I strive to hold on to. And I hope I can be an absurdist and have a lot of fun while addressing these, you know, very adult, complicated topics. But I do think it's, you know, anytime I realize that I can get people on all fours to go inside of a little thing and then see a big world. I don't know if you guys know what Meow Wolf is, but you should definitely check that out. And they immediately drop all of these kind of their armor, their adult armor for me, and are much more susceptible to talk about philosophical issues, to reassess their consumerism and their input and output. And I think the art is the key to getting people into these headspaces. So I think, you know, that especially something that's larger than you will always give you the feeling of being small. And that can be definitely used to pass on messaging. And so I really do think that also in advertising, often, you know, like the terrible 1950s MK Ultra, like stuff that was happening in advertising, Folgers coffee commercials weren't just selling you Folgers coffee. They're also selling you that a woman's place is in the kitchen and these terrible things, and that, you know, that 2 cars and 2 kids and a place in the suburbs is the only way to be right. And I think that using that kind of, that, like, presenting large fun things but slipping in ideas, there's a way to do what I think of as positive psychedelic warfare. And so I think that there, you know, like a lot of people, you can push a lot of imagery and a lot of things into these large installations that then affect the brain in a way, just like advertising does. So I think specifically that's something I think about on how to affect change with art. And like we could talk about that for hours, but
I agree. I feel like you should never underestimate art. I feel like that was what pushed Obama's election, were those beautiful posters.
The Shepherd
I feel
Fairies,
like
yeah.
Historically, art is the people's medium. Art is what activates people, inspires people. it is a huge part of what makes us human and where we shine.
I don't think we wouldn't be video chatting without Gene Roddenberry and Star Trek universe. And, you know, I think the scientists look to artists for inspiration a lot of times, and things like you know, submarines weren't possible until Jules Verne started writing about it, you know. And I think there's just, art informs culture, and culture gives the vantage point to choose what to do with science. So I think you know, art really for me is really, really important. And I think, you know, if people don't think that, then like me being subversive about that is even more fun and more challenging, and you know, I enjoy that.
I'm so happy to hear you saying that. And, you know, just the confluence of art and technology and information, you know, Einstein and Picasso, there's always been stories about the zeitgeist, and they were saying the same thing about relativity and cubism. And when we look at today, where we are and the awareness of climate, and we have all this data and we have all this technology, and the way you're using the technology to create this art and to create the messages, and, you know, where we are now in Los Angeles with the entertainers and the art, and we can, you know, when I think about data art and what specifically Rafik is doing and you're doing and Annie, and, you know, state of the art with visuals in whether it's set design and music videos, how we have this mass communication, and now bringing that, connecting it with the challenges that are immediate, and, you know, the information that AltaSea is creating with this platform for partnerships and to connect everyone. The idea of the Blue Hour being a step in the right direction to be able to start to really, you know, amplify that platform to connect artists and entertainers and culture to this information is a really exciting opportunity. So I hope that we can find ways to continue this and really amplify the message, because that's what AltaSea is all about, is creating this information through education. And today everybody's being educated visually and through technology.
Yeah, I'm so thankful to AltaSea already, just for introducing me. You know, we're talking about community and what a community builder AltaSea is. It's already working, you know. It's in my life has paired me and Annie with and Cynthia, and then now we're talking to people at Schmidt Ocean Institute, and we're talking to cartographer. I never thought I would meet a cartographer. Like, I didn't even know that was still a real job, but it's so inspiring to meet all of these people that are pushing these boundaries, and we have these beautiful, fun conversations. And I think that we're both enjoying, everyone I talk to, it seems like we have this like wonderful give and take from our conversations. So I really appreciate AltaSea and this opportunity, and I want to say thank you to you, Cynthia, and Jenny and Carl and everyone for really connecting the dots for us and providing this opportunity. And it's a really beautiful thing. So thank you.
You're welcome. I really thank you and Annie, and this has been such a joy and such an inspiration, and the entire evening is going to be amazing. So I do want to also mention one more time that we can get tickets. Everyone can get tickets. We'll post a link to the website in the chat, and you should buy tickets and come and see it in person, because it is going to be amazing, and we will share it afterwards, and we do want to create all this content, but it's going to be
it's better in person, and there's only 200 something tickets, so I think that now that they're on sale,
safe and just something you'll be able to talk about and bring your whole family and come in the car. And so we will be very excited to see you all, and thank you. I can't thank you enough, Annie and Mason, and this has been a true joy, and I really look forward to all the other great things that we can all do together, and all the other artists who are listening, and people, especially the youth and everyone who cares about our world and our climate. And, you know, on a day like today where we can't go outside, you know, the hope lies in the ocean, on the blue economy, and trying to solve some of these problems. So thank you, and looking forward to the Blue Hour.
Me too.
Thank you.